Radical Jack here. Rather interesting angle here. Um, see, can we get more of that fire in there? All right. What an interesting 24 hours. So this could be a long one. Yeah, quite a lot has happened. The climbs are going well. Um, I made a video earlier on, um, but my whole storage was clogged up, so it got a bit messy. I didn't really know. It got stuck and paused, and yeah, I wasn't able to upload that. And then I watched it back, and I thought, you know what, I'll just do another one. Um, so this might turn into a long one, because quite a bit's come up. Um, yeah, for starters, I have a confession. Okay, um, first and foremost, the last couple of days I was kind of, I don't know, weirdly, kind of almost psychically like, and this is the thing, So try not to go off on a tangent here, but you know, it's like I set myself up, and we can look at it like, there's potentially a premonition, or a projection, and how close is this line between something that we see happening and could stop it, or something that was inevitably going to happen because it's going to lead to something that, for starters, yeah, being honest. So just trying to be honest when, in fact, I had a lovely soak today in a bath with some seaweed and some salts, and I had quite a lot of. I got great visions in a bath. This is where all my best ideas come, and obviously, I don't know. For me, that's the place. So some of the things that happened were, yeah, very awesome, inspiring. But I'd gone through this whole process during the climb, and during the morning prior to that, on maybe not telling you about this fall, and inevitably what it was really quite simple. I watched it, as I was expressing to you, like it started the first couple of days. 3 days I had no food, just water. Then I started the one meal a day, as you know, and then just after the meal I had one Brazil nut one day and just two tiny little berries, just to stave off that kind of mental condition of program and this afters thing, having afters. And I've been working on this for years. There's so much work, background, in relation to observing these things, and watching the triggers, and really looking into the psychology behind this. So I was aware on the peripheral something was happening. That wasn't part of the program, but there's that kind of thing. Like there was like, okay, well, just the first 8 days, we'll we'll take it easy. But then the following day it was like, two or three nuts. In fact, it was a few cashew nuts, and then a little bit more berry, and then the day after it was like a handful of cashews, and that didn't do me any favors at all. And neither the day before or yesterday, and then it was my eighth day, so I got to thinking to myself, hey, you know what? It's like that kind of thing I was talking about, where, you know, uh, in the old days, we were rewarded with sweet things and stuff, and afters and what have you, if we ate our dinner or we did that kind of thing. So, you know, sometimes we continue as an adult, with the same programs, but we dress them up and make them more, uh, they don't really change essentially. Like it's just that we put a new cloak on it, and you know fancy it up with all these kind of new agey sound bites, whatever you want to call it. And so for me it was, I was aware of it, and as I said some things to you yesterday, the day before, about if if you do fall, not to give yourself a hard time, because I think this is often why we end up prolonging something like an addiction or a habit, a bad habit. Because when we don't meet the discipline or the days or the pact that we lay out for ourselves, we give ourselves a hard time, and then once we're in, especially if you've done 3 weeks and then suddenly you start smoking again, and you just had one evening, but I mean, like, you had that one evening and it's over, but the next morning you wake up and you go, oh well, I've already messed up, so I'll just keep going. So there's the blag, and how easy it is to trick yourself into something like that. So this kind of awareness, like yesterday when I was just saying it, like, um, in case somebody was out there making an attempt and wasn't doing too well or whatever, this kind of thing, just a generalized kind of statement, to make on you know, yeah, it's just the beating yourself up, man. It's tough, man. I mean, like I would do things like most of my life, really just rough things that I just said, oh, how did I end up doing that, And then I would spend all day berating myself, giving myself a hard time, and psychologically torturing myself, and yeah, feeling really guilty and just doing all sorts of things, like, so. And I used to think to myself, sometimes I'd make the thing by far worse, and often the very act of the mind in those moments was often worse in some cases than the actual deed. So this in mind and it's like suddenly I found myself because I'd had the extra nuts, and I decided to have another handful, and this is all within the 1 hour window of eating, so it's not such a bad thing. But my focus has been to stick with just the meal, the one meal, the simple meal, because in reality I don't really want to mess with the elimination process, the detoxification of the body, So this I know, through years of experiences, I've learned a few things, intuitive things, and through trial and error, come to understand, there's like this guy, I watched him yesterday, fantastic, just a little reminder of some of the things. And some people may find 40 days and 40 nights extremely, just extreme in itself, but extremely difficult, and might never make even a week. This guy's doing it with just water, just no food, and he's done it a few times. So, and his take on getting into the subconscious, in relation to getting this program out of our mind as well as our body, because it's working on the physical and the mental and the spiritual, the emotional, So and he talks about it like biblically sometimes, and I love his take on interpretation of demon, just toxins, really, in the same way as more like entities for him. And that's a huge subject, we won't get into it, but I think for me what happened anyway was because I was in, and then I was suddenly thinking, oh well, I've got 80 days to go for impeccability, and all right, setting myself up again for I suppose being strong, and the reality that just because I fell, I don't have to fall any further. But of course, an hour later, there's stuff happening. There's these little kind of voices and strange energies coming at me. And suddenly, like, I find myself I'm peeling potatoes, and so I made some mash, and there was butter lying around, so I put some butter in it, and then I put some salt on it, and I ate it, and it was too much, like, and then of course there was a little bit left over. An hour later, I decided, look, I'll finish it, and that'll be it. That'll be my last supper, and so as I said, I was getting to this point of really thinking about like not saying anything, and then telling you at the end, like after I have my 80 days of impeccability, and there's one little fall, and so it's interesting, what happened, in looking at the whole psychology and this feeling of potentially letting somebody down, or all this kind of stuff that comes up. I mean, it was interesting in itself, just the fact that it was a potato, and I've looked into this whole thing intuitively, and had lots of interesting confirmation around this. But there was a time when the Irish, we had something before potatoes, and potatoes. Some people say that the reason that the English broke us in the way that we were invaded was to take away our grain store and introduce the potato, which became our staple, And in so doing, not just to break us physically, because some people believe potatoes is great for energy, but like not really good brain food. In macrobiotics, grains are seen as universal food, and brain food, like a man can think, intelligently, which means you might get an idea into your head, you might want to revolt, but if you just work in the fields and you've barely just got the carbohydrates to just get through the day, then you're not really going to be much use for fighting or revolting. Interesting synopsis idea, in relation to the information that's out there, because also a grain can be stored up for thousands of years. They found a grain in Egypt once. 5,000 years old, they reckon, this grain in this tomb, and it's known as kamut, and it's now growing in California and has produced seeds and so on, and is in an organic form, but stored correctly. We're talking about economic power, so to even in war, that's one of the things they would do, is take out the grain stores, rob all the grain, because people can't fight then, can they? If they've got no food. And also, if there's famine, which obviously happened in Ireland at one point, where we were, our staple diet was potatoes, and they're a nightshade. They are a nightshade. Let's remember that. Not all spuds are necessarily good. Not all the potatoes are really good, and also, I don't, as a staple, I'm not so sure. I'm never so sure about it. So this is something to look at. Some people say that it weakens the body. So anyway, I got to looking at that while having my bath today, and really, feeling all sorts of information coming through, and and dealing with the this idea of telling you or not, in relation to my little fall, But ultimately, I feel good for being here with you now and being honest and making that decision to be honest about the process, because of all the places that it led to, and it's very interesting, this whole story, because it is a fact that we are to a large degree, we're under a spell, in relation to what we think the body needs and so on and so forth, and ultimately, I have to stay focused now on what it is exactly I'm here to achieve, obviously, as I said yesterday, a 40-day food no food fast, it's just not possible for me at this time, because I have work to do. So in this, I've just got to focus on that, what I've worked out as being like just the right amount, just to keep my energy from completely depleting and putting myself into a state where it's impossible for me to operate, So this is why I've chosen this particular way of doing it, and so yeah, it's very interesting. Anyway, I'm probably going to have to pause and go on to do another 15 minutes, because I want to get to the some of the things that happened to me while I was in the bath today in relation to negative and positive, and linking up the dots, or connecting the dots, connecting the spirals, I like to call it, because everything's spiraling, even a dot, it's a spiral. So I was just kind of like on a positive, like how to get a positive from a negative, in the same way as I was talking about, when we look back on our childhood, or the things that were done to us, by various people, and things we're upset about, the dramas that we stay in, in our mind, things that happened years ago, and how to get away from that, how to make a positive out of a negative, because okay, I'm gonna pause here. I'm gonna come straight back. It'll be a part 2, yeah.